Chapter 7. Dreams of Comfort. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. Gen. 31:11. Dreams often convey a divine message or provide comfort to the recipient. Such messages of inspiration may be comforting to someone who suffers from poverty, sickness, death, or a host of other distressing matters. The greatest comfort obtained from such dreams is to know that God is mindful of our sorrow. For example, Lehi and Nephi were comforted by the Lord in a dream of the tree of life. I Nephi 8:2-4:36. Such dreams give comfort at the time of sorrow, and also render consolation in the future. Nearly every mortal has grief and sorrows while living in this world of darkness, sorrow, and sin. God often gives comfort to his servants that they may not become too discouraged to fulfill their missions in life. An inspirational message was given to a woman which gave her strength to accept the gospel of Christ. Sister Brown's conversion. The Lord aided Benjamin Brown, an early convert, to bring his wife to the waters of baptism. For a year and a half following Brother Brown's entrance into the church, his wife had opposed the work, saying that the church was poor and had a bad reputation among her acquaintances. Then the following manifestation was given to her, together with a revelation of godly knowledge to her husband. She dreamed one night that a large company of visitors had come to her house, for whom she had to prepare supper. On going into her buttery to procure the necessary food to cook, she could only find a small potato, about the size of a robin's egg, lying on a wooden trencher. However, with small stock she commenced, and by some wonderful means, converted this little affair into a splendid preparation of pies, puddings, etc. When they were ready she stood still, wondering how it had all been done, for, as may be supposed, it puzzled her sorely to conceive how, from a small potato, and that on a wooden trencher, she had produced such an elegant entertainment. Just at this moment while she was thus marveling, I was awakened from my sleep, with a command sounding in my ears, that I was to say to my wife, Don't you remember hearing that you should not despise the day of small things? I was to speak at once, without waiting. So I awoke her, and without any preface did as I was bid. The wonderful concurrence of these words with her dream, and the self-evident interpretation of it, referring as it did to her past conduct, for one of the principal reasons of the opposition she felt to my joining the church was, that she considered it disgraced her to have her husband belong to a church that was so poor, and everywhere spoken against, so impressed itself upon her mind, with other confirmations, that she was baptized, and has remained firm to the church ever since. Gifts of the Spirit, by D. Crowther, page 89-90, and Gems for Young Folks, page 63-64. Another early saint was comforted by a dream that helped him in his financial matters. Financial help through a dream. In the fall of 1861, I was called upon to furnish a team outfit for Dixie. I was not very flush in means and secured a yoke of oxen and a wagon on credit, which I started off for the southern country. As the time approached for me to pay for it, I was still more embarrassed, and myself and family were quite exercised about it, and made it a subject of prayer. One night, after retiring, I saw in my sleep the oxen and wagon coming down the Bingham Canyon with a load of wood, as plainly as I ever had seen them when awake. I was intending to send my mules and hired man the next morning to plow my farm, but when I arose I told the hired man my dream, and sent him to borrow a saddle and, after breakfast, we both started to hunt for my outfit, which I could not now believe was on the way south. We rode until noon and came home to lunch. The hired man finished eating first and went to the barn. When I went out he was just about to hitch the mules on a wagon to go down to the farm and plow, saying, I thought you had chased a dream long enough, and I would go and plow till late, and you would not lose much. I told him to take off the harness, and I would prove to him that the dreams of the saints amounted to something. We started out again on our search. About 3:30 p.m. I noticed a sloping roofed shed with the front shut up close with new boards, and on stopping our mules, I saw the end of a wagon tongue sticking out from under the bottom board. I alighted and went around to the back part of the shed, got in and found my wagon that I had sent to Dixie. I took it home and the next day had the man, in whose charge the outfit was placed, before Bishop E.D. Woolley. The result was that I received my oxen and the entire outfit as I furnished it for Dixie. It was proven that it had been hauling wood from Bingham, just as I saw it in my dream. At the close of the investigation I asked the bishop what I should do with the outfit. He replied, You do as you like with it. With it I paid my debts and was relieved of my anxiety, and my prayer was answered. By C.V.S. Juvenile Instructor 1995. A man by the name of James Ward was shown where he could find a box of money to help him in his financial difficulties. A box of dreams worth $8,700. When James Ward, a 40-year-old janitor from Des Moines, Iowa, had a recurrent dream in which he saw a shoebox full of dreams on fire, He had no idea that his dream was a precognitive warning, which was about to come true. On the morning of April 6, 1962, after he had had that same dream the third night in a row, James Ward heeded the warning and found $8,700. On the day it happened, James was awake earlier than usual, sitting alone in his kitchen, staring absently into space. When his wife, Charlene, entered and saw him, she knew at once what was bothering him. "Jim, you had that funny dream again, didn't you?" "Yes," he said hollowly. "I dreamed it again. But I sure would be relieved if I could figure out what it means. I know it's some kind of a warning because I keep dreaming it every night. I see myself down at the dump burning trash, and when I throw this big old shoebox in the fire, I see all my dreams burning up too. It sure bothers me, that dream." James, who at the time was trying to negotiate a second mortgage loan on his house in order to buy a truck for $3,000, with which he hoped to go into the hauling business for himself, had more than one reason for being worried. He was worried if he would be doing the right thing by giving up a steady job he had held for 10 years. He knew that he would never get anywhere in life if he didn't better himself. If he did not take the plunge now, at age 40, he knew he would never do it, and would remain a janitor for the rest of his life. Moreover, he was anxious about his loan application. He did not know if the mortgage company would give him the money. Then, too, he was worried about going into debt and paying off the loan. If he failed, if his business venture did not work out, there was the chance he would lose his house. He did not like the idea of borrowing money to risk it on a business venture, but what else could he do? At 8 o'clock that morning, James' employer, who had just acquired an abandoned warehouse, sent him there to clean up the place and burn the trash. The man wanted the building neat and clean, so it would be attractive when he offered it for lease. He told James that if he did the cleanup job in one day, he could have anything of value he might find in the building. "Just get that place in shape today," he told James, "and anything that isn't nailed down is yours." The building, which had been used by a previous tenant as a household goods storage warehouse, was in an indescribably messy condition. The floors were strewn with rubble. Huge piles of trash and empty cardboard cartons were everywhere. But, accustomed as he was to such dirty jobs upon occasion, James went to work without complaint. He swept up and carried the waste paper and boxes out back to a vacant lot, where he lit a fire and began to burn them. By 11 o'clock the building was cleared of trash. As James was about to toss a big pasteboard box containing a quantity of empty smaller boxes inside it into the fire, he stopped abruptly, recalling his dream. He had an eerie feeling that everything which he had pictured in the dream was suddenly coming true, happening just as he had known it would. He put the big carton down and poked around inside it, examining with curiosity a shoebox that looked oddly familiar. Of course it was the shoebox full of dreams. He opened it and blinked in amazement. Now he understood the warning of his recurrent dreams. Inside that box was a large bundle of banknotes, $8,700. Had it not been for his inexplicably recurring dream, he would not have looked inside that box, and the money would have been burned. James Ward finished his part of the bargain by completing the dirty job of cleaning up the warehouse, and the money was his. With the money he bought his truck and went into business. He prospered, and today he often speaks of his box full of dreams which came true. ESP Forewarnings by Robert Trallins, page 5-6. Through the instructions given in a dream, Elder Thomas Phillips was provided with a new hat. A new hat for Elder Phillips. "I was traveling in the towns and villages in a part of the county of Surrey, England, preaching the gospel as revealed from the heavens through the ministry of holy beings. Under these circumstances, food and raiment were sometimes hard to obtain. Consequently, at one time I had a hat that was very much the worse for wear. In a village called Hersham in that county, lived a brother by the name of William Hobbs, whose house I sometimes visited and received food and lodgings. One night Brother Hobbs dreamt that a personage came to him and told him that Brother Phillips would be at his house on a certain day, naming the time, which I think was 4 or 5 days from the time he dreamt. He was further told that he must get a new hat for Brother Phillips, for the one he wore was very shabby. This dream was very much impressed on the mind of Brother Hobbs and troubled him sorely, for it found him without money and some miles from any town where he could buy a hat. Brother Hobbs was the overseer of a small number of men, whose work was to keep some miles of railroad in repair, for the safety of the trains. Then the day came that I was to be at his house in the evening. He went to his work very low-spirited, not having obtained the hat. While at work on the track, a long train of cars came along, and when passing the place where Brother Hobbs and his hands were at work, a hat, suitable for the finest gentleman in the land, flew out of one of the windows. Brother Hobbs shouted, "That's the hat for Brother Phillips, thank God." When Brother Hobbs came home in the evening, I was there, it being the time specified in the dream. He walked up to me and said, "Brother Phillips, I was to give you a hat, and here it is." To our surprise, it fitted me well. As a matter of course, I was anxious to know who was so thoughtful of an elder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and in answer to my questions, Brother Hobbs told me the dream. String of Pearls, page 64, and Gifts of the Spirit, by D. Crowther, page 185. Apostle Matthew Cowley bore testimony of an unusual occurrence which took place on his mission to the East. The dreams he received gave him comfort and strength in his duties as a missionary. Letters of financial aid. Elder Henry W. Barnett and myself left Salt Lake City, February 24, 1878, for the South with instructions to spend some time in Graves County, Kentucky, among the relatives of Elder Samuel R. Turnbow of this city, and from whose nephew B. R. Turnbow the elders had received an invitation to visit. If we found no encouraging field of labor there, we were to proceed to the state of Virginia. We spent 1 month in Kentucky and held a number of public meetings and gospel conversations. My companion felt impressed that we should go to Virginia and started for that field about April 1st. Not having a very liberal supply of money, we traveled by steamboat instead of rail from Paducah, Kentucky, to Nashville, Tennessee. From thence we proceeded by rail to Chattanooga, where we found ourselves in a strange city without sufficient means to pay our way to Big Lick, our railroad destination in the state of Virginia. We had enough, however, to pay for lodging a few days and obtain a little food each day. We had addresses of members of the church in Kentucky and Virginia, and concluded to write them for means, as loans to help us to our field of labor. We did so, but in every instance failed to procure assistance, and in some instances received no response to our letters. In the meantime, the little money we had was well nigh exhausted, until we had to get trusted for our lodging, and for food expended sometimes 5 cents, sometimes 10 cents a day each for a few crackers and a little cheese or a bowl of bread and milk. While in this straitened situation, I dreamed that I was housed up in a room where there was no air, and in struggling for breath, I would turn to the north, then to the east, then to the south, but in vain, until I turned my face to the west, when it seemed that an opening was made in the enclosure, and I breathed with freedom. Upon awakening, I felt very depressed, for it seemed to me that the dream meant that while we had friends north of us in Kentucky, east in Virginia, and south in Georgia, the only hope was to write home for money, and this I fought against with a strong resolution. Again I slept and dreamed that I received 2 letters from home in the same mail. One was a pale cream-colored envelope, the other, the old-fashioned deep yellow, and addressed to me in my mother's handwriting. When I awoke in the morning, I was still depressed, for while the dreams were clear to my mind as having a decided importance, it was against my inclination to write home for money, so I held out for several days, and did not tell my companion the dream. In a few days, however, Elder Barnett made a remark to me, which impressed me that it was my duty to write for means, which I did, and when the answer came, there were 2 letters instead of 1. One was contained in a pale, cream-colored envelope, the other a deep yellow, addressed to me in my mother's handwriting, in all particulars, just as I had seen it in my dream, and containing means for our assistance. During a 6-week sojourn in Chattanooga without friends and short of means, I also had a dream which was given to me more than once, and which many elders also experience, and that was that I was home from my mission before my time, and any elder who has such a manifestation knows what remorse and sorrow rests upon him while in the dream, and what joy and peace fills his soul when he awakes and finds himself still far away from home and kindred, where duty casts his lot. In one of these dreams I saw President John Taylor, and was very fearful of meeting him, lest he should chide me for being home too soon. But when he spoke, he smiled, and in terms of kindness said, "Well, you're home, are you? You can prepare to go to Georgia now." I finished my mission, was honorably released, and was home a little less than 6 months, when I was called again to the southern states. Having been so greatly blessed in Virginia, having so many friends there, I naturally inclined to go there on my second mission. But President Morgan did not want me to return to that field, but assigned me to the state of Georgia to labor with Brother John W. Taylor, thus fulfilling my dream, though President Morgan knew nothing of the dream until after its fulfillment. To some these manifestations may appear childlike and simple. Suppose they do. We are all children of a larger growth. The prophet Joseph Smith said if the Lord should speak to a child, he would speak as a child, that the child might understand. The lessons I learned by my experience of trial and dreams in Chattanooga were very useful. The experience taught me that while a doctrine is true and designed to be continuous, such as the injunction to travel without person scrip, no man can carry it out by his own strength. It must be done by the help of the Lord, or it cannot be done at all. It is one thing to know the truth of a doctrine in theory, it is another thing to know how to rightly apply it. The manifestation of being home before the right time so filled me with chagrin and sorrow, that I was constantly buoyed up with courage to discharge my duty, and be contented in my field of labor until honorably released to return to my mountain home. M.F. Cowley, Improvement Era 264. The comfort given in a dream to Elder A. Hinckley is a most impressive story. It illustrates the Lord's concern for his servants. The elder's happy family. Elder Alonza A. Hinckley was called on a mission to Holland in 1897, and left behind a wife who was expecting her second child. When the time for the arrival of the child drew near, Elder Hinckley grew very apprehensive and was filled with anxiety concerning the well-being of his loved ones. Yet he was blessed with a dream concerning his family, and was able to write the following letter to them. November 18, 1897. I have never received better news than I have received from you this morning. I am so happy and relieved of anxiety that I actually am beside myself. I cannot keep from laughing when I meet anyone and tell them of my good fortune. I am the most thankful man in Holland, and I tell you, it did not take me long to get on my knees and pour out my heart in gratitude to God for his mercies unto us. I have had such a lovely dream. I have been with you all, seen you, my dear wife, and the little newcomer, and all those kind ones who have surrounded you. I saw you made comfortable and happy. It seemed that I was in a hurry to get off again for Holland. But I first thanked all, with my heart so full of love that I gathered you all in my arms and embraced you, and then took one more peek in the door at Rose, his wife, and the children, and then landed back in Holland. Was this not a beautiful dream for one in my mood? Gifts of the Spirit, by D. Crowther, page 89. Also in Faith of Our Pioneer Fathers, page 234. One of men's greatest fears is death. This fear is implanted within the breast of every man that he might cling on to life, and thus fulfill his mission in mortality. God gives this fear of death, thus, he can also live comfort when necessary. Apostle Wilford Woodruff spoke about a death that occurred in his family, and the dream that gave him comfort. The death of Wilford Woodruff's child. When I was in the city of London on one occasion, with Brother George A. Smith, I dreamt that my wife came to me and told me that our first child had died. I believed my dream, and in the morning while at breakfast, I felt somewhat sad. Brother George A. noticed this, and I told him my dream. Next morning's post brought me a letter from my wife, conveying the intelligence of the death of my child. It may be asked what use there was in such a thing. I don't know that there was much use in it except to prepare my mind for the news of the death of my child. W. Woodruff, J.D. 22-333. Apostle John Taylor, in a dream, saw his wife nearly dead. He prayed fervently for her recovery, and his prayer was answered. He said, John Taylor's sick wife. When I was in Paris, France, about 30 years ago, I had a dream that troubled me very much, in which I saw my first wife lying sick at the point of death, and it so affected me that I awoke, being troubled in my feelings. I fell asleep again, and again the same scene presented itself to me when I again awoke and experienced the same feelings of sorrow, and after some time slept again, and it was repeated a third time. I knew then that my wife was very sick, lying at the point of death. I got up and fervently prayed the Lord to spare her life until, at least, I should have another opportunity of meeting her in the flesh. He heard my prayer. I took a note of the circumstance at the time, and learned afterwards that such had been the case, exactly as it had been shown to me. On the following morning I remember meeting a gentleman who was a Protestant minister, and he observed that my countenance looked sorrowful, and he inquired the cause. I told him that my wife was lying at the point of death, and he asked me if I had received a letter. I told him no, but related to him how it had been shown to me. But I said, I got up and prayed the Lord to spare her life, and I feel consoled in knowing that she will be healed. John Taylor, J.D. 22-354. Before the death of Jedediah M. Grant, Heber C. Kimball received the following dream. The death of Jedediah M. Grant. About 2 weeks previous to the death of Brother Jedediah M. Grant, I dreamed that we were traveling, and we came to a beautiful stream of water. I thought I was going to cross it with him, and with the expectation and understanding that he would guard me across. He crossed the stream unobserved by me, and then I saw him running up the hill as fast as he could, and he got away from me and passed out of my sight. The stream kept rising and becoming more boisterous and apparently more dangerous, and so it continued till I awoke. Heber C. Kimball, J.D. 888. Mark Twain was given a dream in which it was revealed to him that his brother, Henry, was going to die. This, like the previous dream, was both prophetic and comforting. Mark Twain's dream. One night, young Sam Clemens, who would later win literary fame as Mark Twain, had a dream in which he saw the body of his younger brother Henry, lying in a metallic casket resting on two chairs. On his brother's breast lay a bouquet of white flowers with a single crimson blossom in the center. The dream haunted Sam for days, but at last he pushed it out of his mind. Many months later, Sam Clemens was aboard the river steamer Lacey on his way to St. Louis. There he was to meet Henry, who had left New Orleans on the steamer Pennsylvania. But as Sam's boat tied up at Greenville, Mississippi, the little river town was seething with excitement. A gruff voice shouted the news. 150 people lost on the Pennsylvania. She blew up just below Memphis. Dazed, Sam walked around the dock, bought a newspaper, and read an account of the tragedy. And suddenly his heart thudded with relief. Henry Clemens's name was among those saved. But in Memphis, Sam's hopes were shattered. In attempting to rescue other passengers, his brother had been scalded by steam and was near death. For 6 days and nights Sam sat by Henry's bed waiting, hoping. Exhausted, he finally fell asleep, and sympathetic townspeople put him to bed. When he awoke, Sam hurried back to the improvised hospital. He stopped in his tracks as he saw a metallic casket resting on two chairs in the hall. In it lay his brother, just as he had in the dream. Only the bouquet of white flowers with the crimson heart was missing. Later Sam learned that Memphis people, deeply moved by Henry's heroism, had contributed money to buy the metal casket. Then, even as Sam leaned over his brother's body in wordless grief, an elderly lady entered and placed a bouquet of creamy white flowers on Henry's breast. In the center was a fresh red rose, final fulfillment of Sam Clemens's dream. Stanley S. Jacobs, Coronet Magazine, June 1948. A prominent Latter-day Saint had a dream which was comforting, even though its sequel was somewhat sad. Her time had come. He retired to rest one night in his usual good health, and soon fell asleep. He dreamed that his spirit left the body and proceeded, in company with a messenger whose presence was very pleasing, to a most beautiful country. The land was covered with the richest verdure, dotted here and there with houses of convenient size and rich proportion. He was informed by his companion that one of these residences was occupied by the prophet Joseph, another by his brother Hiram, and others by brethren whom he had personally known in life, or whose names were familiar. He inquired if he might see these brethren, but was told by the messenger that they were not at home, their duties, which were very numerous and pressing, having called them to another part of the realm. The impression which this reply made upon the dreamer was that they were engaged in the important and seemingly almost limitless work of preaching the gospel to the spirits in prison. He next asked if his daughter, who had died some time previous, was in this delightful place, and if so might he be permitted to see her. That she was here he was assured, and groups of children engaged in some instructive amusement was pointed out to him, in whose company she was, but the father would not be permitted to see her now. The disappointment did not last more than a moment, for in this heavenly place naught but joy can endure. As the dreamer was standing on a street corner, he saw two ladies approaching him, one of whom he recognized as a young lady who lived not far from his earthly home. He expressed surprise at seeing her, but learned that her present visit, like his, was merely temporary, though he learned that she would soon make this her permanent home. After a visit, the length of which was great when the sights he had beheld was considered, but so short that it lasted only part of one night, his spirit returned to its earthly tabernacle. He wakened his wife and told her that the young lady whom he had met in the other sphere was destined soon to die. Several weeks later our brother was called to visit this same young lady. She was very sick, and apparently had no desire to recover her health. After the visitor had administered to her, she indicated that she desired to speak to him, and he placed his ear close to her mouth when she whispered, "You remember having met me some weeks ago in the other sphere? Well, I am now going there to remain." Shortly thereafter she quietly and peacefully passed away, and without doubt went to that delightful place which our dreamer saw, that was not lighted with sun or artificial means, but was made bright by the presence of the Father. Mill, star 58823 and contributor 1741. When a man suffers in pain, grieves over a disaster, or mourns from a death, his soul can be heavily burdened. He may cry to God through tears of sorrow, pleading to the Father to consider his woes. God is mindful of man's every concern, and will give aid and comfort in those hours of darkness. He may bestow a message in the night through the communication of a dream, and that dream may become a source of inspiration and comfort throughout a man's life. Everyone should live so that his Creator may guide and comfort him in every time of need. John Huss, a Czechoslovakian theologian who lived in the 13th century, wrote and preached the truths which later inspired Martin Luther to finalize the work of the Reformation. Huss is considered to be one of the morning stars of the Reformation, and his labors were inspired by the gift of dreams. To a friend he once wrote, "I dreamed of the Pope's evasion before it took place, and after the event being related. I heard in the nighttime the Saguenay John say, 'The Pope will return to you.' I have dreamed of Master Jerome's captivity, but not in what way it should occur, and likewise of the different prisons to which I should be conducted, such as they were afterwards assigned to me, but without any particular details. A multitude of serpents often presented themselves before me, rolled into a circle, the head forming the tail. I have seen many other things besides." John Hess, Great Voices of the Reformation, page 62 by Harry Emerson Fosdick.